You ever hear the one about the woman whose whole life flipped upside down over a scratch-off ticket? No? Well, buckle up, sweetheart. Because that woman was me. And the story ain't pretty, but it's real. It's raw. And if you listen close, maybe you'll hear your own heartbeat in some of these words. The day James came home with that damn lottery ticket, the air smelled like overcooked green beans and burnt toast. I was in the kitchen, elbow deep in dishwater, humming some old Reba McEntire tune without realizing it. Our daughter, Maisie, was sitting at the table, drawing little hearts and stars on the back of her homework. James swung the door open like he was in a movie, real dramatic-like, and said, "Babe, you're looking at a millionaire." Now, mind you, James had a flair for exaggeration. Last month he swore up and down that he saw a UFO while taking the trash out. So I rolled my eyes and kept rinsing the plates. "No, seriously," he said, breathless, waving a crumpled ticket in my face. 7 million. I won. I actually won, baby. I turned off the faucet. I just stared at him. The water kept dripping from my hands onto the linoleum. $7 million. We were a paycheck-to-paycheck family. That kind of money? It wasn't just a miracle, it was a parallel universe. He ran to Maisie, picked her up and twirled her in the air. She squealed, and her little legs flailed midair. "We're rich, princess. Daddy did it." I should have felt joy, relief, something, but instead, a lump grew in my throat. Something about the way he said, "Daddy did it," like he'd done it alone, like the past 8 years of struggle didn't count, unsettled me. The next few days were a blur. News vans in the driveway. Cousins we hadn't seen in a decade suddenly dropping by. I made lemonade and smiled for the cameras, pretending to be the perfect wife beside the perfect man who just hit the jackpot. But even then, something in James had started to shift. It was subtle at first. He didn't hold my hand when the cameras weren't rolling. He started sleeping later, going out more. His laugh turned a little mean. He said things like, "We finally made it," when I knew what he meant was he did. He started buying things. A lot of things. A new truck. An ugly leather jacket he said made him look like a badass. And a boat we didn't need. James couldn't even swim. Then he opened a bank account I wasn't on. Just to keep things simple, he said, not even looking me in the eye. Maisie kept asking when we were going to Disneyland. I told her soon. But that day never came. And you know what's funny? The more money we had, the less he needed me. Or pretended not to. I started to feel like one of the old shirts he'd thrown in the Goodwill pile. Useful once. Sentimental maybe. But not needed anymore. Then came the woman. Of course there was a woman. He said she was just helping with investments. I said, "Since when do investments wear red stilettos and smell like birthday cake?" He didn't answer. He just walked out. When he finally did leave for good, it wasn't with a goodbye. It was with a text. A freaking text. "You and Maisie will be taken care of. But I need to live my own life now." I stared at my phone until the screen went dark. I didn't cry. Not yet. I had a little girl asleep in her bed and school lunches to pack. So that's how it started. Me, the dishwater, a lottery ticket, and a man who traded love for leather jackets and lonely nights on a yacht. I wasn't sure how I was gonna get through the rest of it. But I knew one thing. I wasn't gonna let him write the ending to my story. After the text, that godforsaken text, the silence in the house felt like it could swallow me whole. I sat there on the couch for I don't even know how long, staring at nothing. Just me, the whir of the old ceiling fan, and the weight of knowing the man I'd built a life with had packed up his soul and left without looking back. I didn't even hear Maisie come into the room. She must have been standing there a while, in her pink pajama pants with the little clouds on them, watching me, clutching that scruffy bunny she never slept without. "Is Daddy coming back from his trip today?" she asked, her voice soft. I couldn't lie to her, not then, not anymore. "No, baby. Daddy's not coming back today." She didn't cry. Just nodded real slow and walked over, climbing onto the couch and curling up against me. I wrapped my arms around her and we sat like that, two girls against the storm, one small and wondering, the other shattered but trying hard not to show it. The first few weeks were a blur of legal documents, bank meetings, and endless calls with a lawyer I couldn't afford but desperately needed. Turned out James had shifted most of the winnings into his name alone, for tax reasons. At least that's what his new accountant/arm Candy told me over speakerphone, like she was talking to a waitress who got the order wrong. "You'll be provided for," James kept repeating, like that made it better. He threw some money into a trust for Maisie, sent me a lump sum, enough to cover the house, a few years of expenses if I pinched pennies. He thought money was enough. Like it was ever about the money. He forgot that I didn't marry him for wealth. Hell, I married him when all he had was a second-hand truck and a smile that made me forget how broke we were. And now? Now he had everything. And I was left with a 6-year-old and a mortgage and a closet full of his shirts I couldn't bring myself to box up. I went back to work at the diner. Morning shifts. I hadn't slung hash browns since Maisie was in diapers, but it came back quick, muscle memory. Mornings were slow, mostly older folks reading the paper, farmers with cracked hands and gentle manners. Sometimes they'd ask how I was doing and I'd smile and say, "Hangin' in there," even when I wasn't. There was one customer, Mr. Reed, who always sat at the corner booth. He was retired military, always wore a flannel tucked in tight. He never said much, just nodded when I poured his coffee, left big tips folded neatly under his plate. One morning, after a particularly hard night filled with Maisie's nightmares and my insomnia, he looked up and said, "You got a good way about you. Even when you look like hell." I laughed for the first time in days. "That a compliment, Mr. Reed?" "Best one I got," he grinned. Life wasn't pretty, but it moved forward. Somehow, day by day, Maisie started asking less about her daddy. Started sleeping through the night again. One afternoon, she brought home a drawing of our house with just the two of us out front, holding hands. Her teacher had written, "Strong families come in all shapes." It nearly broke me, the kindness of it. James? Oh, he was living it up. His Instagram, yeah, I checked, "I'm only human," was full of champagne flutes, Caribbean sunsets, and selfies with that woman whose teeth were too white to be real. He never once called to ask how Maisie was doing. Not once. I kept thinking maybe he'd feel something, remorse, shame, longing, but if he did, he hid it well behind those designer sunglasses and rented Lamborghinis. And me? I was learning how to patch things up with duct tape and grit. I didn't have millions, but I had a daughter who loved me, a job that kept the lights on, and neighbors who dropped off casseroles and pretended not to notice when I cried on the porch some nights. Funny thing is, when you lose someone like James, you don't just mourn them, you mourn who you thought they were. But you also find out who you are. And turns out, I'm a hell of a lot stronger than I ever gave myself credit for. You'd think after a man walks out and leaves you to pick up the mess, both literal and emotional, life would sort of pause. But no, it just keeps going, like some stubborn old train that won't stop for tears or heartbreak. You still gotta get up, brush your teeth, pack a lunch, and pretend like cereal for dinner is a fun treat and not just all you can afford that night. I got used to the quiet. At first, it was loud, if that makes any sense. His absence echoed through the walls like he'd left a hole in the air. His boots weren't by the door anymore, his deep laugh didn't fill the hallway during football games, and the sound of the garage door opening, the one that used to send Maisie running down the hall yelling, "Daddy." Well, it just never came. The mornings were the hardest. I used to wake up before him, sit at the kitchen table with a mug of instant coffee, and listen to him snore from down the hall. There was something strangely comforting about his snoring, like the world was still spinning just right. Now it was just me, the hum of the fridge, and that old kitchen clock that ticked like it was judging me for not having it all together. Maisie took to sleeping in my bed most nights. I didn't stop her. I'd wake up with her little arm thrown across my face or her knee pressed into my ribs, and I'd think, well, this is my life now. A queen-size bed full of elbows and teddy bears. And you know what? I wouldn't have traded it for all the yachts in the world. Every few weeks, James would send a wire transfer. Like he was checking something off a list. No calls. No video chats. Just a sterile little ding in my bank account and a note from his lawyer that said, "Monthly stipend completed." There was something about the word stipend that made my blood boil. Like I was some distant cousin on an allowance. Like our daughter's bedtime stories and scraped knees could be itemized and filed under miscellaneous. One night, after putting Maisie to bed, I poured myself a glass of wine, cheap stuff, boxed, 2 weeks old, and sat out on the porch wrapped in an old flannel. It was cold, but the stars were out, and I needed the kind of silence that only exists outside at night in a small town. That's when my neighbor Tammy shuffled over in her slippers, clutching a Tupperware full of lemon bars. Tammy always knew when to show up. Like some kind of suburban angel with desserts and unsolicited advice. "You look like you're thinking real hard," she said, plopping down beside me. "Just remembering," I said. "And trying not to." She passed me a lemon bar. "You know what I always say, memories are like leftovers. Some get better with time. Others just start to stink." We both laughed. It felt good to laugh without choking on it. "You ever think about dating again?" she asked, like she was asking about a new recipe. I snorted. "Tammy, I still flinch when the toaster pops. I'm not ready." "Well, when you are," she winked. "I've got a cousin who owns a landscaping business. Works with his hands. Real arms-on type." "You mean hands-on?" "Nope," she said, dead serious. "His arms are amazing." I laughed until my cheeks hurt. After she left, I sat a while longer and thought about what moving on might actually look like. Could I love someone again? Trust someone? Let someone into this messy little life I'd patched together with duct tape and lemon bars? I didn't know. Still don't. But I do know this: peace is expensive. It costs you the comfort of what you once knew, even if that comfort was built on lies. It costs you tears at midnight and wondering if you'll ever feel whole again. But slowly, day by day, it starts to come back to you. Like the way the light hits the kitchen at 7 a.m. Like your daughter's sleepy voice asking for pancakes even though you both know it's just gonna be Cheerios again. Like the ache in your chest finally softening into something you can live with. No, I wasn't rich. Not in the way James was now. But I was getting by. And sometimes, getting by is its own kind of fortune. You ever be standing in line at the grocery store, half asleep, wondering if you grabbed everything on your list, and then boom, there he is? Right in front of you, smug as ever, staring from the glossy cover of a magazine? That happened to me on a Thursday. Rainy day. My hair was pulled up in a claw clip, I had no makeup on, and Maisie was tugging on my sleeve asking if she could get gum. I looked down at the checkout rack, and there he was, James, grinning like he'd just solved world hunger, posed on the deck of a boat with a woman half his age clinging to his arm like a tick. "Self-made millionaire, from small town to South Beach," the headline read. I stood there frozen, clutching a box of spaghetti and a gallon of milk, while the cashier scanned items behind me. I didn't say a word. I just stared at that magazine like it had slapped me across the face. Maisie tugged again. "Mommy, that's Daddy." The cashier, a teenage girl with chipped blue nail polish and a look like she'd rather be anywhere else, glanced at the cover, then at me. Her eyes widened like she recognized me too, and suddenly I felt like I was on display, a relic from the before picture. I didn't buy the magazine. Just paid, loaded the groceries into the trunk, and drove home in a daze. Maisie sat in the back seat humming along to some pop song on the radio while I gripped the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. That night, after Maisie was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with a sponge in one hand and a wine glass in the other. The dishes were half done, just soaking there in lukewarm water, and I just sat, thinking. I remembered a time when James would come home late from work, greasy from the auto shop, and plop into the chair across from me with that same crooked grin. He'd say, "One day, babe, we'll hit it big. Buy you that beach house in Florida." I'd smile and say, "I don't need a beach house, James. I just need you." Turns out he did buy a beach house. Just not with me in it. You know what's wild? After everything, after the betrayal, the money, the new life he carved for himself like we were nothing, there was still this tiny flicker inside me that missed him. Not him now, Not the man on that magazine cover, but the James who used to dance with Maisie on Saturday mornings in the kitchen, who used to fall asleep mid-sentence telling her bedtime stories. Grief is a tricky thing. It doesn't always show up wearing black. Sometimes it slips into your house through a grocery store aisle and sits at your table while you try to finish the dishes. A few days after the magazine incident, he called. For the first time in months. Just called out of the blue like everything was fine. "Hey," he said, casual like he was ordering pizza. "Thought I'd check in. See how Maisie's doing." I didn't say anything at first. Just held the phone, heart pounding. "She's fine," I finally said. "Still doesn't like peas. Still misses you. Not that you'd know." He sighed, like I was the one being difficult. "Don't start, okay? I'm just trying to do the right thing here." "James," I said, my voice shaking, "calling twice a year is not the right thing." There was a pause. Then, "I never meant to hurt you." I almost laughed. "Yeah? Well, you did. And not just me. Maisie too." He got quiet. "I'll send more money." And there it was, the answer to everything in his mind. More money. "She doesn't need money," I snapped. "She needs her father." "But you've already traded that in for a yacht, and some woman who probably thinks Frozen is still in theaters." I hung up before I started crying. I wouldn't give him that satisfaction. After that, I didn't hear from him for a while. And honestly, it was better that way. Because every time he tried to make it better with dollar signs, I remembered what it actually cost us. Maisie and I, we were figuring it out. We had our own rhythm now. Our own routines. Movie nights with popcorn and blankets on the floor. Mornings where we'd sing in the car on the way to school. Evenings when I'd let her help make spaghetti and she'd proudly call it gourmet. I had my hands full, but my heart? It was finally starting to feel like mine again. James may have won the lottery, but I was starting to realize I hadn't lost everything. I'd kept my soul. There's this moment that hits you when you least expect it, like when you're pulling socks from the dryer or slicing a tomato for dinner, and suddenly the grief comes back full force, like it's been waiting quietly in the corner, just out of sight, ready to knock the wind out of you. It was a Wednesday when it got me. Maisie had made this drawing at school. Crayons on construction paper. She'd drawn a family. Us. Me and her. Two little stick figures with big smiles. But then off to the side, she'd added a third. A man, drawn smaller, like he was far away. There were tears on his face, and his shirt had a tiny dollar sign on it. She handed it to me like she was proud. "I made us," she said. "And that's Daddy. He's far, but he's thinking about us." I stared at the drawing and felt something twist deep in my chest. I smiled so she wouldn't see the ache, but when she turned away to grab a snack, I had to slip into the bathroom just to cry where she couldn't hear me. God. The things I cried for that day. Not just for myself, but for her. For the way she still believed he might come back, still imagined him with tears in his eyes. For how she whispered "good night" to him sometimes before bed, even though he hadn't called in weeks. For every time she asked, "Do you think Daddy misses us?" and I had to say, "I think so, honey," because the truth would break her. And I cried for the things we lost that don't show up in divorce papers. The sound of his laugh from the living room. The smell of his cologne on the pillow. The way he used to kiss the top of Maisie's head like she was the most precious thing in the world. I cried because once we had something real. I swear we did. Maybe it was messy and small and held together with duct tape and prayer, but it was ours. And now? Now we were a footnote in his success story. I remember one night I tried to bake his favorite cookies. Not for him, God no, but because Maisie asked for them, and I hadn't made them in over a year. I burned the first batch. Forgot the vanilla in the second. By the third round, I had flour in my hair and tears in my eyes, and Maisie was watching from the kitchen doorway, holding her stuffed bunny. "It's okay, Mommy," she whispered. "We don't have to make them anymore." She didn't mean the cookies. Not really. That night, we ate microwave popcorn and watched Matilda in our pajamas. Halfway through, she fell asleep curled into my side, mouth slightly open, bunny tucked under her chin. I stared at the screen, but I wasn't really watching. I was thinking about all the things I'd held onto for too long, hope, anger. That ugly green hoodie of his I kept hidden in the closet. A few days later, I finally boxed up the last of his things. The hoodie, the guitar he never really learned to play, a half-used bottle of cologne that still smelled like him, woodsy, warm, and devastating. I drove to the donation center myself. Sat in the car for 20 minutes holding that box in my lap. My hands wouldn't let go. But eventually, I walked in, dropped it off, and came back out feeling like my heart had been scraped raw. I didn't cry right away. Not until I got home and saw Maisie's tiny shoes by the door, the ones she'd outgrown but refused to throw out because Daddy bought them. That night, I cried into my pillow. Quiet, desperate sobs. The kind that leave your eyes puffy for days and your soul wrung out like an old dishcloth. And you know what the worst part is? He didn't even know. He was out there, somewhere warm and loud and full of people who thought he was wonderful. He was living his second life, the one he bought with the scratch of a coin. And me? I was still trying to teach our daughter how to tie her shoes and forget the sound of the door slamming that last morning. There's always an empty seat now. At the kitchen table. In my heart. In every school play and parent-teacher meeting. But I fill it the best I can with love, with patience, with stories of how strong we are. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because the only way through it is through it. Funny how money burns faster when your hands are greedy and your heart's empty. I didn't hear much about James for a while. After that call, the one where he offered a few more dollars like it was penance, I let him drift out of my mind as best I could. Focused on Maisie. On work. On keeping my little world stitched together with coffee and conviction. But life has a way of circling back. Just when you think you've turned a page, the past sticks its ugly face back through the door. It was Tammy again, always Tammy, who brought the news. We were folding flyers at the PTA meeting, and she leaned in close like she had a secret too big for daylight. "You didn't hear it from me," she whispered, "but your ex is back in town." I blinked. "James?" She nodded, her voice barely above a hum. "He sold the boat. Gave up the place in Miami. Some kind of financial mess. Rumor is he's broke. Like, real broke." I stared at the paper in my hands. My heart didn't leap or sink. It just paused. Like it needed a second to catch up. "I don't care," I said. It sounded brave. But the truth was I did. Not because I wanted him back, not even close. But because I had loved him once. And watching someone you loved throw their life into a shredder is its own kind of heartbreak. I didn't tell Maisie. She still thought he lived on the beach, drinking orange juice in the sun and petting dolphins or whatever it is kids imagine their absent parents doing. And I wasn't about to rip that picture down with tales of bounce checks and burned bridges. But the news trickled in. First it was the boat gone. Then the luxury condo foreclosed. Then a short, pathetic clip on some clickbait site. Lottery winner declares bankruptcy less than 2 years after jackpot. He looked different. Thinner. His face pale, like he hadn't slept. And those designer clothes? Gone. Back to jeans and a tired flannel, like the one he wore the day he first kissed me in his dad's barn. People say money changes you. But maybe it just strips away the costume you wore to hide the parts of you that were always broken. I heard he tried to start a business, something ridiculous, like a chain of gourmet hot dog trucks. Blew through half his winnings in 6 months. Took bad advice from worse friends. Tried to invest in a crypto app that turned out to be run by a guy in Croatia who disappeared with the rest of his savings. He still had the woman for a while. But I guess when the champagne dried up, so did she. Left him with a suitcase and a note that said, "I'm not built for broke." I won't lie, I didn't feel sorry for him. Not really. Maybe a flicker of pity. Like when you see someone slip on ice, you wince, but you don't rush to catch them. Not if they're the one who put the water there in the first place. And then one night, he showed up. I was closing up the diner. Pouring the last of the coffee down the sink, wiping down counters. The bell over the door jingled, and I looked up expecting a regular. But it was James. He looked small. Not in size, but in spirit. Like someone had taken the man I married and wrung him out completely. "Hey," he said, hands shoved in his pockets. I didn't speak. Just stared at him, waiting. "I was driving by," he said. eyes darting around like he couldn't look me full in the face. Thought maybe I could see you. See, Maisie. I crossed my arms. You've got a lot of nerve. I know, he said quietly. I deserve that. There was a long pause. He looked at the floor, his boots, anything but me. I messed everything up, he muttered. The money, the life, you. All of it. I thought I could run from it. From the hard years. I thought money would fix everything. It never was about the money, I said. My voice shook, but I held it steady. You left us, James. Long before the checks started bouncing. He looked up, and for the first time in years, I saw something familiar in his face. Not love, but shame. The real kind. I don't have anything left, he whispered. Not even pride. That's not true, I said, picking up my purse. You've still got consequences. And you better start carrying those. I walked past him, flipped off the diner lights, and stepped into the night air without another word. I didn't look back. Because even though he came back to town, to this diner, to this street, he wasn't coming home. It was 2 days after he came to the diner when Maisie found out. She was sitting at the kitchen table, bent over a puzzle we'd started a week ago, some enchanted forest scene with too many trees and not enough sky. She picked up a piece and looked at me, her voice soft. Mommy, did Daddy come back? I dropped a dish towel. My hands went cold. I hadn't said a word. I had hoped to protect her just a little longer. Who told you that? I asked, trying not to sound like my heart was falling through the floor. She shrugged. Saw him. At the park. I was with Aunt Lacey. He waved at me, but he didn't come over. Just sat on a bench. My mouth went dry. I didn't know what broke me more, him showing up at the park like a ghost or him not even walking over to say hello. He looked sad, she added. Like that mattered. Maybe it did. Maybe not. I knelt beside her, brushing the hair from her cheek. Baby, I said, I need to tell you something. Your dad, he's going through some things. He made choices that hurt us. Hurt you. I know you miss him. I do too, sometimes. But we can't count on him right now. She nodded slowly. Too slowly. Like she was pretending to understand something way too big for her little heart. Will he ever come home? I didn't lie. Not anymore. I don't think so, honey. But that's not because of you. That's because of him. And we're gonna be okay. You and me. She sniffled. Okay. That night, after she fell asleep curled against me like a kitten, I sat in the dark with a cup of cold tea and tried to remember the last time James had kissed her goodnight. Tried to remember if I'd known it would be the last. He started showing up more after that. Not to see us, not really. But you could tell he was circling. Like a man who'd lost his map and kept returning to familiar places hoping something would feel right again. He took a job at the hardware store. Part-time. I heard from Mrs. Buckley, whose husband managed the place. She said he kept his head down, worked quiet. She said he looked like someone who'd aged 10 years in 2. And then, one afternoon, he came knocking. Literally. I opened the door and there he was. No flowers, no suit. Just James, holding a bag of groceries and looking more like the man I married than he had in years. I brought you something, he said, lifting the bag like it was some kind of peace treaty. Not much. Just some things for Maisie. She still liked those strawberry yogurts. I didn't answer. He sighed. I know I can't fix this. But I'm trying, okay? I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. What do you want, James? To help. Help with what? You think a bag of yogurt erases what you did? The birthdays you missed? The nights she cried because you didn't call? He looked down, shame burning red on his face. No. I just want to be in her life. Even if it's just a little. I looked at him for a long time. And in that moment, I felt something unexpected, not hate. Not love either. Just this hollow sort of ache. Like looking at a broken clock you once loved, still beautiful but useless for keeping time. You don't get to waltz back in and play house, I said. But if you want to be her dad again, you start by being consistent. You show up. You prove yourself. And you do it for her, not for you. He nodded. I will. I don't believe you, I said. Not yet. He stood there like he was waiting for something, maybe a thank you, maybe a hug, I don't know. But he didn't get either. He left the bag on the step and walked away. Maisie opened the door a minute later. Who was that? I picked up the bag. Just someone trying to remember who he used to be. That was the beginning of James trying to become a father again. And I'll give him this. He showed up. Started small. Letters. A birthday card. A toy left on the porch with a sticky note that just said, "For Maisie, love, Dad." He started asking if he could take her for ice cream. I didn't say yes right away. Trust isn't a light switch, it's a bridge, and his was still under construction. But when I finally let him, she came back smiling. Chocolate on her chin. He said he was sorry, she told me. Like, really sorry. That night, I cried again. Not because he was back. But because maybe, Maisie could have a part of her father without me losing the rest of myself. Maybe some people don't come back whole. But maybe they come back trying. And maybe sometimes that's enough to start again. Spring came early that year. The dogwoods bloomed pink and white along the edge of town, and the wind had that warm promise to it again, that feeling that maybe, just maybe, life was starting over in some quiet way. I remember waking up to birdsong and sunlight streaming through the curtains, and for the first time in what felt like forever, my first thought wasn't what now, it was thank God I'm still here. Maisie was already awake, curled in a patch of sunlight on the living room rug with her books spread out like petals around her. She looked up at me and smiled with all her teeth, like the world had never hurt her. Like hearts didn't break or parents leave or dreams get shattered. Kids are like that. They heal faster. Or maybe they carry the weight differently, like balloons instead of anchors. James had started coming every other weekend. We kept it neutral, ice cream trips, short walks, sometimes the zoo if he had enough gas in the tank. He always looked a little out of place, like a man trying on someone else's life. But Maisie didn't care. She didn't see the rips in the fabric. She just saw a dad who came back. He got a better job, eventually manager at a feed store just outside town. Nothing flashy. But he showed up every day. Paid his rent. Kept his word. And that meant something. We'd talk sometimes, James and I. On the porch, while Maisie played hopscotch or colored chalk suns on the driveway. He never tried to apologize too much anymore, maybe because he knew some wounds don't want apologies. They just want time. I think about it all the time, he told me once, voice low. What I had. What I lost. I nodded. I know. I thought money would fix it all. Like, that it would fill every empty space in me. Turns out it just made the hole louder. I looked at him, not with bitterness, not with longing, just a soft kind of pity. The kind you feel for a man who finally woke up after sleeping through the most important parts of his life. You had everything once, I said. You just didn't know it. He nodded. And you held it together. All of it. I don't know how. I smiled, tired. Because I had no choice. Because she needed me. Because I loved you, even when you didn't love yourself. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We weren't getting back together. That chapter was closed, sealed with heartbreak and growth. But we were something now. Co-parents. Maybe even friends. Wounded survivors of the same storm, standing on opposite shores. And me? Well, I changed too. I stopped working so many hours at the diner. Took an online course in bookkeeping. Started dreaming about things again, real things. Not yachts or lottery wins, but a small business. A garden. A porch swing I'd buy with my own money. One afternoon, I walked into Maisie's room and saw she'd drawn another picture. This one had 3 people again. But we weren't stick figures anymore. She'd added hearts between us all, even between me and James. No tears. No distance. Just a family broken maybe, but still loving. Still trying. That night I tucked her in, kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'm proud of you." She grinned. For what? For being so strong. So kind. So, you. She shrugged in that funny little way she does and said, "Well, I got it from you." I turned out the light and sat for a while at the edge of her bed, thinking about how far we'd come. About how sometimes you lose everything you thought mattered, only to find what really does waiting for you on the other side of sorrow. James lost it all: money, love, respect. And me? I lost the dream, the husband, the illusion. But I gained something too. I gained clarity. I gained strength. I gained a version of myself I never would have met if he hadn't walked out that door. And maybe that's the biggest one of all.